Well, remember, we saw those buses cruising home ass. They make you get to the next intersection, and when they show up, they're going to start arresting them and putting them on the buses to process. Because this is, what I can't understand is where's the state patrol? This is their area of responsibility. So.
Okay. Say what? Yeah, let's go over here somewhere.
Let's do that. And then you're still hooked on, right?
Yeah, I've been up the whole time.
Yeah.
Fox has been taking some of us.
Okay. I say we just do it here.
Well, hold on. You want to get over by that fence?
Well, I just didn't want to, because this road, I mean, I guess it's up to them.
Over here.
Yeah, I mean.
Alright, let me just get reoriented here.
Right, Dan?
Yes. IP 11. Mike's in there. Here, hold on a second.
Is this the mic?
Yep.
The wireless lav?
Yep.
This one? Or?
Yeah, it's coming right here. I'm just putting it in the battery. Okay, but Mike is hot.
So that one, okay.
Yeah,
That one out of your bag.
Oh, it's all right.
Paul Bloom. Yeah, hear us. Do you hear me? Mic check, check.
But again, we have been watching this for a little while. Paul Bloom has been with that group since this protest march began earlier today. And so, Paul, I know you've been kind of on the move. Where are you right now?
Well, we're right at the on-ramp in which they got on here at I-94, just on the edge of downtown St. Paul. But yeah, several hours of protests right in the shadows of the state capitol. We're just panning up towards the ramp that we're talking about here. See the St. Paul skyline. And what's interesting, you know, authorities have never, I mean, it's illegal to be out on the interstate and have never really appreciated this sort of movement. But here in St. Paul, the police are blocking the ramp. They gave them the intersection to come down on here. Not everybody has followed suit onto the interstate itself, but a good size, good portion of this crowd did go down onto the ramp. We presume they're headed towards Minneapolis, which would make a lot of sense given there's some other George Floyd actions happening in downtown Minneapolis at this hour. So yeah, this is the movement. We weren't sure. They certainly didn't telecast this march. There was the rally, and as it was wrapping up, they basically announced, we're going. They were clearly organized, though, because they did have marshals. They did set some ground rules in terms of going on the interstate. They had a lead pickup truck vehicle. I assume if we're still showing our helicopter, you'd probably see the pickup truck leading the way. But this has gummed up westbound traffic out of St. Paul and towards downtown Minneapolis. Again, we're above. We didn't get on the interstate itself, but again, getting back to the events of the day, the speeches, the calls for justice went on in a gorgeous Sunday afternoon sun for hours. Great crowd, a diverse crowd, a crowd of all ages. And as it was wrapping up, maybe around 3:30, or probably about an hour ago, they made a move. They did a march around University, kind of over the light rail tracks. They massed in position. The marshals gave the orders. The pickup truck arrived.
Paul,
bicyclists moved up to the front, and then they headed out on the interstate.
Paul, let me interrupt you for just a second. We've got a series of bikes that have, with riders, they're off their bikes, that have closed off that intersection to give folks who are coming westbound on 94 a chance to stop and peel off. Is there any sign of State Patrol or anybody that, I mean, clearly this isn't law enforcement that are using bicycles and other things, taking road signs and forcing people off the interstate. Have you seen any form of intervention here at all from law enforcement?
No, that's kind of what I meant. A good question. I mean, it's kind of why I mentioned it off the top. Was St. Paul police did block the intersection. There's an intersection where the marchers had to turn right onto the ramp at, I believe it's St. Anthony. And St. Paul police did block that intersection. So they kept cars from coming, basically giving them the ramp. And then the marshals took charge. There was a pickup truck up front. I noticed the part of as they were giving out the rules or the guidelines to the demonstrators, kind of the organizers of this march, they asked the bicyclists to move up front to help shield traffic. So they had a strategy, but absolutely, when we got to I-94 and they got right onto the highway, they were on their own. No State Patrol in this area. So I thought it was an odd situation of authorities blocking the preliminary intersection to give them the ramp. But then once they got on the ramp, highway traffic was still going by at 65 miles an hour. So there's always that moment where someone or something, and it was a pickup truck and I think some bicyclists, that ended up making the block to allow the demonstrators on foot to actually set their feet on the interstate.
Well, there is a police car coming now.
Yeah, so Paul, just so you know what we're looking at right now, we have Skyfox 9 up, and so the bicyclists are there creating a barricade, and we have people turning around in the median and then going up the ramp to turn around. There is a police vehicle that has shown up, but it looks like it's turning around with the rest of the people in traffic here right now.
Sure, but clearly nothing that had been organized with authorities. You know, sometimes a demonstration, organizers will kind of coordinate with police, and certainly they had some help in St. Paul getting the cops to help them on the ground here. But on the interstate, I absolutely believe they are on their own. And as I mentioned, police, no one wants this. This interstate is not shut down. It is an active interstate. The eastbound lanes are flying past, and clearly the westbound is stopping. Drivers are getting frustrated and realize they have to get off at this point, because who knows how long that demonstration will take to get all the way to their destination, which again is, I'm presuming, is downtown Minneapolis.
It does. It's interesting to note. It looks like from Skyfox 9, the group, the largest group of people. I can't get a handle on how many are there. Probably several hundred. It looks like at least a couple of hundred anyway. Have stopped. I don't see that amoeba form of people still moving through all 4 lanes of traffic. For whatever reason, they've stopped right in the middle of the interstate now and have not moved for the last minute or so.
And just as an FYI,
And
I was just going to say, Paul, real quick.
it's just oh, sorry. Yeah,
That's okay. Yeah, I know there's a little bit of a delay, so it's difficult, but I just want to remind people that MnDOT will be closing down the main arteries in and out of Minneapolis and St. Paul at 8 o'clock tonight. Last night they did that at 7 o'clock. So there is a plan 3.5 hours from now to close down these interstates. People will be able to get out of the cities, but not in. And so we've got, again, so you know what we're looking at here, Paul. We've got chopper footage of, the police cars that are on side streets, maybe monitoring this situation, but not intervening.
And for our viewers, just to give a location again, this is on the stretch of 94 westbound between the state capitol and Minneapolis, and that's where we are right now with that group. But they have definitely stopped moving.
Yeah. And
Hey, Dan, guys, can I take your attention? We got some armored vehicles on the move over here now, coming onto the ramp. They've got a couple different vehicles and like an ATV tracker. You can probably see the flashing lights if you take my camera and get off of helicopter, but an armored vehicle now. Here is your police movement. Here is their response to what has just happened. Again, they do not want anybody on this interstate, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but clearly now law enforcement, if not getting ready for a response, certainly is going to come upon this demonstration. Now, what happens next, I am not an expert, but clearly even more armored vehicles coming behind that. Dan, if you pan towards the city of St. Paul, we got even more vehicles coming. So this is a long cavalry of vehicles that are now going to head out onto the interstate. And I don't know what's next, but we can presume some action is about to take place.
well, let's stay with this for a little bit, Paul, okay? Let's stay with your camera and also check in with our chopper. This group, though, we should note, has been peaceful all day long. This was a peaceful protest. Can you tell us a little bit about what has transpired over the last couple of hours and what this group has been doing at the state capitol?
Yeah, I mean, this was called, it began as at a noontime, sort of resetting the dialogue on this case in terms of refocusing it on the George Floyd, criminal justice efforts, and there were speeches, different civil rights leaders, Native American dancers. It was a wonderful afternoon of calls for change, of demanding the officers involved in the George Floyd arrest, that they all be arrested and charged. And it was what you would call a very nice afternoon. Now at the Capitol was interesting because of the security threat that was announced earlier this week. There was a heavy National Guard presence, military vehicles, state patrol, police had that Capitol building surrounded. Now, there was never any threat by this group, but that's just the situation we're in terms of security, in terms of the high-value target the Capitol is. So it was set against this backdrop of massive sort of police and law enforcement heavily geared up, preparing for some kind of interaction with the crowd, but it was nothing. It was peaceful. And then, like I said, at the end, this march was not telegraphed. This march obviously was planned, but they certainly hadn't shown their cards. And I was trying to talk to the marshals who help get the crowds through the streets. And I said, hey, are you guys going on the interstate? Is your plan to go up on the interstate? And they just don't talk to me. They don't say anything. And clearly they did have a plan to do this. They got some help from St. Paul Police, again, at that intersection. And I don't know if you can see, but the heavy armored vehicles are now blocking the interstate itself from my location, heading west.
Yes.
So they may be giving the demonstrators this road to get into Minneapolis. I know these authorities this week have been loath to really engage the peaceful protesters, the demonstrators looking to send a message. So perhaps this heavy response is purely to protect the demonstrators on the freeway, assuming that they believe this is only a 4-mile jaunt into Minneapolis, that they'll give them that. I just don't know. I'm only speculating at the
I think
moment.
what you're about to see, Paul, and we're going to flip to Hannah Flood here in a second in Minneapolis where protesters, but I think what you're about to see coming up the hurricane fence there is that line of bicyclists that were the ones that originally stopped traffic. Just behind you now, if you look behind you, you can probably see them. Technically, from a protester standpoint, they are still peaceful, although they are breaking law with going onto the interstate. So, to your point, Paul, it is possible maybe the law enforcement are just going to let them go peacefully into downtown, and they're trying to do what they can to keep motorists and any of the protesters safe while they're making that trek down the interstate.
Mm-hmm. Can we keep this shot up of the chopper while we go to Hannah Flood, who's in Minneapolis, also with a protest group? Is that possible? Okay. All right, so let's go to Hannah, and we're going to try to keep this shot up so we can monitor what's happening in St. Paul. So Hannah, you're with a protest march as well. Tell us when this organized and where you guys are.
Hey, so I talked to the organizers of this protest. They say they're not really with a particular group. They just wanted to put this together. I think what's interesting about this protest, and excuse me, I'm going to take my mask off here. What's interesting is they named this No Bail. So this group is really looking forward. They say they are happy about the charges that have come for Officer Derek Chauvin, but they say they need to be thinking about the future. They say the charges are just the beginning. As you can see, this is a big group. This is a loud group. I think all week this might be the biggest demonstration that I've seen. This started at US Bank Stadium, and organizers got onto the megaphones and said they want this to be the largest protest, and they want to show the world that Minneapolis can unify and Minneapolis can protest peacefully. So that's what organizers are calling for, that say this is what this event is all about, that showing of symbolism across the world to show that Minneapolis is united and protesting in peace for George Floyd. Now we're headed towards the Hennepin Avenue Bridge, and that's where organizers say they're going to take a knee, take a moment of silence. I'm also told that George Floyd's family is expected to join in on this march once we reach the bridge. So that's what we're following right now, and then after that, we're expecting that they will get on 35W at University Avenue, possibly. We're just with the crowd right now, following through with them. I haven't seen any really law enforcement presence out here. We went past the Hennepin County Government Center and City Hall. I saw a few deputies around, but otherwise it's mainly these demonstrators taking over these streets of downtown, again calling for this big showing of a big, peaceful, and unified protest. So right now we're heading towards the Hennepin Avenue Bridge, where we expect that kneeling, that moment of silence for George Floyd and his family. So we're going to keep following along with this group, with this caravan, and we'll be sure to bring you any updates as soon as we can. For now, live in Minneapolis, I'll send it back to you.
All right, Hannah, thank you. It's interesting to note that St. Paul Mayor Melvin Carter earlier today made a point on social media and other formats to express his viewpoints about how this should move forward. And he was very clear about the fact that he felt protests should continue peacefully. The violence should end, the looting, the burglarizing, all the anarchy or talk of anarchy should end. But the protests, he said in his view, should continue because of the work that in his view needs to be done in the memory of George Floyd.
And just to recap, we have two groups right now that are on the move. You're looking at a live picture of 94, and there's a group coming from St. Paul, and they're on 94 right now. And then there's the police vehicles blocking traffic there that will be turning around. And then the group that Hannah is marching with, coming from US Bank Stadium, headed to the Hennepin Avenue Bridge, and she thinks then we'll be headed to 35W at University Avenue. Let's go back to Paul, who's in St. Paul right now, and with a look at the group that's marching and what you're seeing there.
Sure, Kelsey, you'll have to let me know if we're still in chopper or our ground camera, because right behind me you can see the heavy armored vehicles and police vehicles just blocking 94 westbound. There's also some kind of ATV type, more nimble type police vehicle down in our foreground, down below us there. That's on the freeway. They're getting traffic to turn around. If you're on my camera, then you can see
on your
traffic
camera, Paul.
now. Okay, great. So you can see now traffic is on the wrong side of the interstate right there. They were given permission apparently to go eastbound in the westbound lanes of traffic. We also saw them exiting westbound traffic up this on-ramp to get the traffic on their way in this direction. Obviously, you guys have talked about it, the curfews, the shutdown of the freeways don't happen until later tonight. So these freeways are still open and there's still traffic certainly heading in the eastbound direction here at I-94. We're between Marion and Western Avenue, the two bridges here. We've chosen, our decision is to stay off of the interstate. It is illegal technically to be on the interstate, but clearly they are getting some law enforcement support for this action. We also had pointed out a few minutes ago the bicyclists who are charged with helping guide those on foot, the demonstrators, probably a few hundred strong. Those bicyclists have at least a number of them exited the freeway and are on this service road heading up towards Western Avenue. And then, Dan, why don't we just show the squads that are here now, blocking any sort of efforts to bring traffic down on I-94 at this on-ramp. So clearly some police activity. Again, really important to note this is an action taken by a group that has been peaceful all day long, demanding justice, demanding attention, demanding we talk about the issues that surfaced in the killing, the death of George Floyd. And obviously this is part of the effort. What I'm wondering is what kind of coordination is occurring with the group Hannah is with. Is there some effort to meet somewhere? Is there some effort to coordinate and bring everybody together? I know Hannah had mentioned that I-35 area where 94, 35 all come together, if that's where everybody's going. We just don't know. Sometimes it's hard to get information. These organizers keep this information to themselves. I did try talking to their marshals, asking where they're headed. Are they going down on the interstate? And they're just told me they can't talk to me. So, yeah, it's just anybody's guess. We just have to continue to watch both from above and the ground.
Paul, the narrative today during that peaceful rally at the Capitol, among those that were protesting and rallying, was it a narrative of peace? I mean, are you convinced that, or at least based on what you heard today, that is the intention as they move toward the city of Minneapolis?
Well, I think Hannah nailed it on the head, this idea of changing the narrative away from the violence, the radical elements of destruction, damage, looting, rioting, and refocusing it on what this mission was all about. And I think we saw that today at the Capitol, and I'm just trying to remember the title. Organizers had titled this like reframing the dialogue, reframing something or other, but basically, yes, they wanted to take back this day and show that Minneapolis, St. Paul, this area, folks here are concerned about the issue of a fair and just society where unarmed, handcuffed black men don't end up dead at the hands of police. And I think that's what we saw today for hours. Speakers from all over the country. I was there. I listened to Mayan Burrell, his dad. If you remember that storyline that flared up during the Amy Klobuchar campaign for president, that is a family who believes their son is in jail, wrongly convicted of a murder, basically because he was a young black teenager. His dad spoke out, rallying the crowd. Another woman, we've done stories on the conditions up in the Bemidji jail, Beltrami County, and the death of an African-American inmate. His mom spoke out, Delshia Perry, talking about Hardell Sherrill, but there is a movement here, and that's what we saw today, and it was an extremely diverse crowd. I would say overwhelmingly white, but families of all ages. It was sort of a day on the Capitol grounds to lie under a tree, to find space, to at different times to kneel, to chant. But no, it was a fabulous event, I would say, in terms of the mission that it had. And then, as I said, they were wrapping up, and they set out on this march that clearly was planned. It just was not telegraphed for us. And you can see some people, I assume, over here that maybe got off the interstate at this point or are coming back from the demonstration, because this is the direction they had headed off the interstate. But and you can see mostly young, white folks carrying signs and making their voices heard.
Yeah, Paul, you know,
we've got a few more.
The mission
I was just going to point out just a few more
Okay.
MnDOT vehicles coming down. I don't know what that means, but I apologize for interrupting you there.
Oh, no,
Kelsey.
that's okay. You're right. They're probably trying to do some more traffic control right there. And so just so you know what we see here, Paul, at the front of this group is the Native American group that performed yesterday and then again today. So they're sort of leading the group down the interstate, and that's what we can see them actually, you know, sort of performing as they're walking. But the mission has been lost for the last few days because we've seen so much violence, so much looting, and the issue of how's that going to get under control. And, you know, and behind that, taking a back seat has been what happened to George Floyd. And a lot of people are really upset about that, you know, people are taking their eyes off of what started all of this. And today we've seen an incredible outpouring of support. The amount of food that has been delivered to these communities because their grocery stores have been lost and their school lunch programs are closed. And Metro Transit, you know, can't even provide a bus right now to get to another grocery store for people who don't have transportation. And the people who've come to clean up this morning, it has been incredible, the showing of support that happens in the daytime hours in these communities.
It's an interesting point. You made me think of one anecdote that I did observe today at the rally on the Capitol grounds. There was one. I mean, it was a large crowd, so I hate singling out one event of ugliness. But there was an older man that came to the scene of the rally. He was on the periphery, and he basically started yelling and shouting, "Black Lives Matter. Are terrorists. They burned down my neighborhood. I'm going to have to get on a bicycle now and go all the way to St. Louis Park to get my groceries. They're terrorists. You shouldn't be celebrating." And apparently we're showing that video, the confrontation, basically again beginning with an older guy coming down there saying, "You don't have any right to rally here, to march here, to parade here." He said, "You guys don't deserve a parade. This group is a bunch of terrorists. They burned down my neighborhood. I'm going to have to ride my bike all the way to St. Louis Park to get my groceries." And as you can see in this confrontation, he was met by some folks that sort of put him right. And sent him on his way. There was some booing, some yelling back and forth. He eventually turned around. But again, it kind of shows, two sides of the coin in what we've seen in terms of events in the Twin Cities these last few days. He had some raw emotions based on his experience. But then you had this crowd, again, mostly white in that video there, that basically sent him away and kept anything else from escalating.
Also free, as we all know, to express his First Amendment right, and it was good that it ended the way it did, and no one was hurt. It's also clear, Paul, and when you look at the highway from above, that law enforcement is clearly going to let them do this. They have used their own vehicles to close off any vehicles that would be heading west on 94 at the point at which that crowd began to filter onto the highway. So it's clear, at least at this point, that they're just going to let them go.
Yeah, the effort to keep them safe.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've talked about the decision to not engage with some of these demonstrations during the week, letting them have their space. Obviously, law enforcement is sort of the source of the anger and the frustration, so any sort of interaction with them, I think the decision has been made this week, as long as it doesn't involve late-night looting and rioting, that they can have their space. The only thing you do wonder, at some point, again, it is illegal to be down on the interstate. Is there, at some point, an effort to sweep up this group that's down there? But certainly, if police are giving them their space right now, we can presume that they will be able to make it to their destination.
Okay, Paul, well, just ahead of this group, we have Courtney Godfrey. So we're going to come back to you, Paul, in just a minute, but we want to go to Courtney to see where she is just ahead of this group and where they're headed and what you're hearing and seeing, Courtney.
Yeah, well, Kelsey, it's quiet here. We're at University and 35W. As you said, we are ahead of the protesters. From what we understand, they'll be coming down University after crossing the Hennepin Avenue Bridge. And it's at that point that they plan to get on 35W on this on-ramp that we're standing at right here. But I'm looking down University right now, and I'm not seeing anybody coming. I think Hannah just told us that they are still waiting to cross the Hennepin Avenue Bridge. Okay, I'm seeing some people with signs, but they look like they're heading to find the march. So we're here. Traffic is completely normal. This is regular traffic on 35W for a Sunday at 5 o'clock during a pandemic, and regular traffic on University. But I have a feeling that in about 30 minutes, you're going to come back to me and it's going to look very different here. We're told that George Floyd's mother is going to be meeting up with this protest when they get to the Hennepin Avenue Bridge. So we expect to see her at the front of that line. But again, you can see still traffic as normal. And we are just waiting for those protesters to get here and to see if they indeed take to the highway. Kelsey?
Okay, and just to clarify, there are two groups. There's a group coming from US Bank Stadium headed to the Hennepin Avenue Bridge, and that's the group that Courtney is in front of right now. And then there's the group coming from St. Paul that is on 94.
Yeah, I don't want to confuse our viewers when you look at the interstate and see the group. It's not, as you point out, the same group that Hannah and Courtney are expected to see there at the Hennepin Avenue Bridge. Again, this is, thus far in the day, it's been nothing but calm. These protests have remained calm. They remain calm, with the exception of a few back and forth, as Paul pointed out, one case there at on the area of the state capitol, but for the most part, there has been no problems at all today. Nothing like we saw in the days previous and the evenings previous. But I think one of the things that law enforcement will have to figure out between now and the time that group gets to Minneapolis is how far are we going to let them go? Are we going to let them get on to 35W with the other group that Hannah and Courtney reference, or are we going to have to divert them onto safer streets? That's likely the scenario as they move into the major part of the cities. Had this obviously been going on after 8 o'clock tonight, it wouldn't have mattered a whole lot other than a curfew, because traffic will be closed on all of those arteries going down. It sounds like they have changed, though, the time frame for the highway closures from 8 o'clock back to 5 o'clock.
And they're expanding those closures into St. Paul, and I'm just assuming that that's because we have protesters headed to the highway, and they decided to move this up, which we just saw the MnDOT trucks coming in Paul's live shot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a safety issue, and I think, and here's the map that shows, those of you at home who are watching this, shows which of those major thoroughfares will be closed. They closed them last night at 7 o'clock and kept them closed until 6 a.m. this morning. And as we just said, they will be closed at 5 o'clock, which is 16 minutes from now.
And then it will be a longer closure
Much longer.
as well into tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I can run down the list of highways. You can see them all right there, but we're talking about 35W and 94, 394 between Highway 100 and 94, Highway 55 between 62 and 94. So I think their effort is to get these marchers to a safer place, by following them, blocking traffic, and getting them to where they want to go, but maybe to prevent the group that's coming from Minneapolis from getting on 35W because they haven't made it to the Hennepin Avenue Bridge yet.
Can we go back up? There it is. Go back up to the chopper. You can see the size of the group is decent. I mean, there are several hundred people there, and they have been moving pretty effectively and efficiently, quickly from the state capitol grounds onto the interstate and toward Minneapolis. And the group is growing by a few here and there as they go through that several-mile trek between the two cities. And it has completely shut down earlier than expected. I-94 westbound. Here's a traffic camera at I-94 and Lexington Avenue, so you can see exactly what we're talking about there. The group you see on the left side of your screen is the westbound, and they're headed west toward Minneapolis. And the car slow down you see eastbound on 94 at that Lexington I-94 area.
So it's going to take a while for them to get there, and we'll continue to watch the group. But again, there are police vehicles following and cutting off traffic and helping the traffic divert onto side roads and around. And then pretty quickly here, we're going to see MnDOT shutting down all the main arteries into Minneapolis and St. Paul.
A lot of questions about what today and tonight would look like after last night, primarily peaceful, uneventful night in Minneapolis and St. Paul, a success based on law enforcement, National Guard, and some policies that the government invoked, one of them closing interstates down last night. And law enforcement, the governor, the mayors have all said that the same type of situation will be in place tonight. They don't believe that the worst of those that came into our city or those that are in our city have gone away entirely. And so they're going to approach it very much like they did last night.
Yeah, I mean, there were reports from the police departments that they were stopping cars that did not have license plates. They were confiscating things from cars that could be used as weapons like rocks. And they even, confiscated a high-powered rifle. It was relatively quiet last night compared to the nights previous. But the law enforcement presence was known last night. It was organized and it came out early. Roads were blocked, police in riot gear were out, and they gave the crowds a little bit of leeway. The curfew went into effect at 8, and it was about 9, right before the sun went down, that you started to see them mobilize. And they had surveillance from the air, and they were blocking intersections. They were blocking the group's ability to move across the Lake Street Bridge from Minneapolis into St. Paul. St. Paul police were on the other side waiting with tear gas, and so they stopped that group, and they were able to disperse the crowds pretty quickly. So they don't want people out and about. If you're out after 8 o'clock, they'll assume that you're there for the wrong reasons.
All right, let's rejoin Paul Bloom. He is behind the protesters that we see on I-94, but he is with some that keep coming and going. Paul, what do you have?
Well, I'm going to just stop a couple people because some people have turned around because I think the walk got too far ahead of them on the interstate. Guys, just wanted to talk to you about how the day went today. Do you guys have some thoughts?
Huh?
Just on how today went and making your message clear.
It went pretty decent. I feel like we got more to do. We got more to go as a community. But it went decent for right now, you feel me? So, yeah! But it went, I feel like it went better. We still got more stuff to do. It's kind of messed up what's going around in the community, police killing. Yeah.
And I felt like today was to reset the narrative, right? People have seen the rioting and the looting, and that seems to be taking away from the message. Is that how you viewed today's events?
I don't know. I mean, it's like we got a negative side and a positive side. It's like y'all take something from us valuable, we gonna take something from y'all. And I know it sounds messed up, but it's just like, they keep taking from us, but the community want to show like a message, like y'all keep taking our people from us, we gonna take stuff y'all really like, own businesses, Gucci, all that, But it's like we got a positive side. Like, we came out today, it wasn't no violence or anything. We still walking the highways.
What do you want our viewers? Well, what's the headline you'd like to tell my viewers?
Let me see. I say,
be safe.
Yeah, be safe. Honestly.
Be safe. That's one.
Be
safe.
And were you guys down on the interstate?
Yeah, we was on the interstate.
And then did it just get too far and you had such a long walk back?
That was too much. Way too much.
Well, you guys be well, be safe, and thanks for spending a minute with us. I really appreciate it. Take care. So just a couple of voices in the movement. Again, we've seen a fair amount of the demonstrators who went down on the interstate actually coming back. And the theme that at least I've got, not everybody wanted to stop to talk to a TV crew, but it's basically they got so many, miles down the road away from where they had parked up by the Capitol that they were peeling off at that point. I don't think, at least the folks said they weren't told to leave the interstate. In fact, their organizers, their marshals have said they could remain safe down on the interstate. I haven't seen or heard from you guys what the helicopter is showing at this point. But again, some people peeling off after a long day out in the sun and a pretty sizable march that's taken place down onto the freeway.
Yeah, well, also realizing that if they get so far down the road, there are going to be these highway closures that begin at 5 o'clock. How are they going to get back and get their cars?
Yeah, coming back.
And, logistically how to do that. It's going to get complicated here for people who are marching right now with these closures and the curfew going into effect.
Yeah, you're up against the curfew. Yes, very good point in terms of movement once 8 o'clock hits.
Paul, can you do something for me and dig a little bit into what that young man said when you asked him about the narrative? It was kind of bits and pieces, and you're standing right there. But my sense was that he said something to the effect of, referring to whomever, the community, the whatever, taking something from them, so we're going to take something from you. What did he say?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it was. You take from us, I took that to mean George Floyd, another black life. We'll take from you. And then he rattled off a couple of brand names like Gucci and something else. I think that was a reference to the looting and to some of the thievery and the rowdiness we've seen in the cities this week. I didn't call him out on that. He's a young man that had his thoughts right there. I caught him in a brief moment on live TV. But yeah, he was basically saying, you take one of our community members, we're going to do something back at you. I assume, I hate assuming what people mean, but, sort of the white-owned, society, white society or society at large that we're going to steal or take from you. And I think he was just conveying that feeling.
All right, so Paul, right now we're looking at Skyfox 9 above you. We're seeing law enforcement on the interstate now. To bring our viewers back about 20 minutes, right around 4:30-ish or so, 4:15, a rally ended at the state capitol. A large number, several hundred of those ralliers jumped onto I-94. Law enforcement did what they could, and that was to close off the interstate as best they could to keep people safe, and they've continued to do that and allow the ralliers to make their way westbound on 94 toward downtown Minneapolis, and that's what you're witnessing right now. Those two law enforcement vehicles that we saw are actually on the eastbound lanes, stopping there and just essentially watching.
Yeah, and moving traffic over to 2 lanes, slowing traffic down there on the eastbound side too. And then in Minneapolis right now, there's a very large group that had started at US Bank Stadium. They are headed toward the Hennepin Avenue Bridge and may be there in the next 10 to 15 minutes. And they're expected to take a knee and say George Floyd's name. And then there's the possibility that they may try to get onto 35W. But with MnDOT now closing down these arteries in 7 minutes, probably to prevent and keep people off the highways at this point.
Well, they're clearly exiting right now.
Yeah.
The crowd is.
And so these highway closures were supposed to start at 8 o'clock, but then they've moved up 3 hours. So we'll start. Let's go to Paul and let's take a look at, he's been in St. Paul, and there goes some National Guard Humvee vehicles.
Yeah, sorry guys, just wanted to show you the National Guard is on the move from St. Paul. They're sending their Humvees out and about. This perhaps could be related to the 5 o'clock highway closure, but this is the heavy-duty National Guard equipment and vehicles that have descended on the Twin Cities for law enforcement efforts this weekend. The curfew upcoming, road closures at 5, 8 o'clock curfew. You saw the actions taken last night. I believe we were told today we're up over 4,000 National Guard troops on the ground in the Twin Cities, and they are certainly on the move. Just look at this. I'm assuming they were staging over here in St. Paul and now perhaps moving into some type of positioning for their missions tonight. I don't think this is, directly related to the march I've been talking about. I only wanted to get your guys' attention just because you can see just rolling our video when you guys picked us up a little late, just how many vehicles, how much machinery, how many troops are on the ground in the Twin Cities right now. And here they come. They just keep coming and coming and coming and coming.
Yeah, you're probably right, Paul. Obviously, there was a lot of National Guard help, the citizen soldiers' help in closing off the interstates last night. As you point out, that'll be needed again tonight, and scrambling faster than they thought they would be needed. So it's likely that's exactly what's happening there. I believe as we looked at Chopper Skyfox 9 in the air, that's Lexington Avenue that they have exited off on. So from there, they would be clear of the interstate and head west into the cities or into Minneapolis if that is in fact what their goal is.
So we'll continue to watch, and Paul Bloom is in St. Paul, Hannah Flood is in Minneapolis, and Courtney Godfrey is also in Minneapolis. So we'll be checking in with those 3 crews throughout the evening. This is the Lexington Avenue camera where the group of marchers is exiting right now off of the highway. And we don't know if there's an effort to bring these two groups together at some point or what they have planned. But compared to last night, we are seeing more law enforcement presence earlier because there was the curfew at 8 o'clock, which is again in place again this evening. And last night, we really didn't see law enforcement making their moves until about 9. So I think with these protesters getting on the highways, everything has been sort of moved up. Highway closures moved up 3 hours now and will start in the next couple of minutes. So anybody who needs to get across town, just keep that in mind right now. If you're going from Minneapolis to St. Paul, that these major arteries will be shut down. No traffic going into those cities from those highways.
There will be a period of time during that closure where they do allow traffic out of the Twin Cities. But for the most part, they want people to clear out of that area. Hannah Flood is live in Minneapolis. She has been with a group of marchers downtown. Hannah joining us now again. Hannah, how's it going down there? And you look like you've approached the Hennepin Avenue Bridge now.
Yeah, we have approached the Hennepin Avenue Bridge. You can see there that famous Grain Belt beer sign. Right here, thousands of people. I couldn't even estimate how many. This group is so big, the biggest that I've seen this week. Thousands of people just took a moment on the bridge. They took a knee with their fists in the air, calling for justice for George Floyd. And you can just see how big this crowd is. Look at how many more people are still coming. That's how big this group is. And again, today they're calling for this peaceful protest. They say that George Floyd's family has joined them, so that's something that we're watching for as well. I'm going to take my mask off here. Excuse me, Randy. And I want to note, we haven't seen any law enforcement presence out here yet. So it appears that they're staying away from this for now. We do know that the plan is to cross the bridge, make their way down University, and then get onto the highway. So I know Paul is dealing with the situation in St. Paul where that just happened. So we'll see what the response looks like there. But for now, I'm going to turn around and just show you all of these people on the bridge here.
And Hannah, while you're doing that,
together.
I want to tell our viewers that the group Hannah is with is not the group you see from the helicopter. Those are two separate groups, so we don't want to confuse our viewers as to what they're seeing. There are two separate groups now taking one to the interstate, now getting off the interstate at Lexington Avenue, headed west, and this group, as you can see, just at the Hennepin Avenue Bridge.
Yeah, I also want to mention, too, that the Houston mayor announced today that George Floyd's body would be taken back to Houston. He's a Houston native, grew up in the 3rd Ward there, and he will be buried there. And so the Houston mayor and the police chief announcing that this morning at a news conference, and no additional details as to when that would happen. And the family has not announced funeral plans, but stay with us. We're following continuing coverage here of two groups of protesters, one traveling from St. Paul and one in Minneapolis. And they have gotten off of the highway there in St. Paul, and we'll continue to follow this, so stay with us.
And there you go, folks. This is what's happening at 5 o'clock tonight on a Sunday. A group of protesters have made their way onto an interstate, I-94 westbound. They are now off the interstate, headed west onto Lexington Avenue. They've just peeled onto West.
Well, these groups are marching to a destination that we don't know yet. And in Minneapolis, there's another group that's on the Hennepin Avenue Bridge right now. I think they were going to try to get on 35W, but the highway closures that started at 5 o'clock will likely prevent that.
And we have reporters stationed in downtown Minneapolis. Courtney Godfrey's there, Hannah Flood's there. Paul Bloom was at the Capitol all day. He's moved himself to within range of the protesters that you saw there. He is behind them. Paul, tell us about what you saw today and what the intent, as you see it, the protesters are having tonight as they head toward Minneapolis.
Yeah, I think the message all day here was basically an effort to reframe the message, the headline coming out of Minnesota. We're showing our video from the demonstration. It was peaceful. It was several hours long. Families, folks of all races, sitting on the lawn of the Capitol. The Capitol, heavily fortified with security, has nothing to do with this specific event per se, but the credible threat the state had received that a high-value target like the Capitol was in fact a target this week of people who wished perhaps to do harm onto our communities. But yes, this rally today, all day long. In fact, I have a couple of people. Do you guys want to say something about today's rally?
We saw them on the highway going by, and then they said if we wanted to come along with them, we could. So we got dressed. We're trying to hurry back to them right now. Yeah.
You want to be safe?
Yes.
And were you part of the speeches at the Capitol today?
Oh, no, we didn't get to it.
You didn't go to the demonstration, but you were just observing. Okay, well, I'm sorry to stop you there. So they were not part of the demonstration. But yeah, it went for several hours. As it wrapped up, maybe around 3:30, organizers said we're on the move, we're going to march. They gave people the opportunity to peel off at that point or join them. They did about a 2-block loop using University Avenue and then came on. And here behind me, the St. Paul Police, this is the on-ramp they used right here at the Marion Street Bridge. And authorities gave them did not engage with them at all. They gave them the interstate. The pickup truck was in the front of that group of several hundred, and then they marched out onto the interstate. I'm just going to make a quick observation that I know you guys had said that the highway closures were happening at 5 o'clock. Clearly, there's still some pretty good active eastbound traffic on the interstate that we're picking up, but I assume over the next few minutes we will see that die down. And there you see it live for you before your eyes. The interstate still got some traffic. I'm assuming it takes some time to sort of shut down ramps and the like. I do want to just bring up. I don't know if Lori has it queued up in the booth. The video. There was one confrontation at today's rally that provided a bit of tension. We have some video here. I do want to play a little bit of it, but again, one incident that we noticed in an afternoon of really peaceful protest, and here it is.
They're a terroristic organization, and the other thing is they're protecting Black Lives Matter.
Sir, this is not the place for this.
Yeah, it is exactly the place.
No,
when they cheat us, they didn't show. None of them showed.
Sir, no, we've had too much.
None of them showed. They didn't come to help us. They are 6 blocks away. Fire department.
This is why we're in this situation.
You burned down our whole neighborhood, and you expect to have a parade here?
You are misinformed. This is not the place for you.
It's exactly the place.
No. You are misinformed.
I'm leaving. Burn down your neighborhood. Burn it all down.
People who had come to demonstrate peacefully talked to him. They tried to say their piece. Both sides did. He eventually walked off. I used some language that I know offended some people in the slightly earlier live hit, but that situation ended peacefully. It was just the tension of what's occurred in that man's neighborhood in recent days, and he came to tell them. Tell protesters that he was a bit frustrated. But back on Chopper, I assume we're showing the interstate at this point.
Well, actually, Paul, we're showing.
Let me give it back to you.
Yeah, we're showing them now on what I believe is Lexington Avenue, off the interstate. They have cleared the interstate, and Skyfox 9 is above Lexington Avenue. It stands to reason that they're heading toward University Avenue, which would be the next main thoroughfare for them on that side, or on the north side of 94. Where they go from there is I guess still remains to be seen.
And we'll see. They may get diverted because of law enforcement closures of roads too. We'll just see what the response is. That law enforcement vehicles have helped them to safely get down the interstate and then onto this exit. Also want to make note that these are 2 very large crowds that are on the move in Minneapolis and in St. Paul, and incredibly diverse crowds. There was so much diversity in the groups that came out today to talk about George Floyd. And I just want to mention again that George is from Houston, Texas, and the mayor there and the police chief announcing today that his body would be flown back to Houston. No details on when a funeral would be, but George Floyd grew up in Houston's 3rd Ward and was also a star tight end for Jack Gates High School, they say, played in the 1992 state championship game in the Houston Astrodome. I talked to a friend of his on Friday who was part of a community outreach program. George Floyd was known as sort of an ambassador in the 3rd Ward of Houston, knew everybody. And at 6'6", he was just this giant that mentored younger people. And so this community outreach came in, and George was their connection to getting, to help the youth there. And he actually moved here as part of a Christian ministry program, they said, to better his life. So again, that will be happening at some point, but family has not announced any details of his funeral. We do think that his family members, some of them, have traveled here and are part of this march in Minneapolis. And Hannah Flood is there right now with that group, and they've been in the Hennepin Avenue Bridge. Are they still there, Hannah?
Kelsey, yeah, that group that was coming across the Hennepin Avenue Bridge, we're kind of on the back end of it now, but we watched thousands of people march from US Bank Stadium to this bridge, this iconic bridge here in Minneapolis, for this peaceful protest. Now, the name of this protest today was called No Bail. That's because the organizers say they're looking ahead. Yes, the officer involved in George Floyd's death, one of the officers, has been charged, but now they're saying, with the weekend coming to an end and possibly that first court appearance coming up, they're asking that Officer Chauvin get no bail. So organizers here say really this is just the beginning of an uphill battle to get justice. The charges are just the beginning, and they're calling for those 3 other officers to be charged. Today, organizers said they really wanted this protest here to be a symbol to the rest of the world that Minneapolis is united, that Minneapolis can protest in peace and call for justice in peace. So that's really been their big message today, hoping to get around 10,000 people. They said there was a really, really powerful moment on this bridge here maybe about 15 minutes ago where the thousands of people here stopped. They took a knee and they put a fist in the air and took a moment of silence kind of as a symbol for George Floyd. And they said those are kind of those powerful images that they want to get out to the world, not those images that happen after dark. So now we know as they've crossed this bridge that they're headed down University, and we're told that they plan to get onto 35W. And I know that we have a crew that's awaiting that to happen, but so far things here have been peaceful. Hundreds more people still trickling in. I think this week in all of the demonstrations that I've covered, I believe, Kelsey, that this one has been the largest one.
Yeah, very big groups they're traveling today. So we'll come back to you in just a little bit here, Hannah. We want to talk about the road closures that are supposed to begin here at 5 o'clock. I think because they moved them up just so quickly here. They were supposed to start at 8, that we actually have not seen MnDOT crews closing down the intersections, but it is their intention to close off the major arteries into Minneapolis and St. Paul. So we're expecting to see that start to roll out here at 5 o'clock, probably a reaction to the fact that the protesters got onto the interstate.
Which should make the situation for them safer if, in fact, the law enforcement is going to allow them to get onto 35W. There are the road closures that we talked about earlier. Make note of these if you're at home and plan to travel. You can see them. I won't read them all, but pretty much every major thoroughfare in and out of Minneapolis and parts of even, parts of St. Paul can be affected by all of this. Are closed tonight starting at 5 p.m. and will be in effect, it says, until 6 a.m. Courtney Godfrey is also down in Minneapolis tonight, downtown Minneapolis, in that area where protesters are headed. She joins us now live with a camera that is still moving, but she'll get it set and join us with what she's seeing there
we're here
on the other side of those protesters. Hi, Courtney.
Yeah, Randy, obviously a fluid situation down here, so our camera's just trying to get as many shots as he possibly can. So apologize if the camera's not on me, but nobody wants to see me. They want to see these protesters. Here they come down University. This is the same crowd that Hannah Flood has been following. As she mentioned, they just crossed over the Hennepin Avenue Bridge, and now they're coming down University. You can see bicyclists leading the way. We're told maybe George Floyd's mother is in the crowd now. She was supposed to join up with them at the Hennepin Avenue Bridge. Now, here's going to be the moment of truth, guys. We don't know if the plan is for them to get on 35W for sure. I can tell you this, there is absolutely no law enforcement in the area right now. We don't see a state patrol. We don't see Minneapolis police. We don't see the National Guard. But here they are, citizens. Dan, will you just pan over to the right here? You can see these bicyclists that are starting to block traffic. They are telling cars to turn. They're stopping the cars from getting on 35. So you can see that these citizens, these protesters are stopping these cars from getting on 35. They're clearly blocking the way so that this march can head down onto the freeway. Here you go. This car here is trying. Dan, pan to the right, please. This car is trying to get on the freeway, trying to get past the protesters.
Not everybody's going to be happy with
Look
this.
like they're going to get past. No, and that's what we expect in any situation like this, Randy. You can see it's really a lot of bicyclists here who are now they're going down this road here to see if they can start the blockage a little sooner.
So Courtney,
they're really making the way for all these.
So Courtney, just so you know, this is
Go
what we
ahead,
saw
Kelsey.
in St. Paul as well. There were a group of bicyclists that went down on the highway on 94 and shut off traffic first. So obviously this is what's happening now.
And the problem that's going to come, Kelsey, is we are still seeing a steady flow of traffic, especially for, a Sunday evening during a pandemic. We're still seeing a steady flow of traffic coming down 35W. So I don't know what's going to happen then. They're going to stop them here at this entrance from getting on, but we still have traffic coming down 35. So here come the protesters. I think, as Hannah told you, they wanted this to be a really peaceful protest. They want to show the world that Minneapolis is not just what you see after dark, fires and destruction and looting. They want to show the world that Minneapolis can protest peacefully and that they can call for justice for George Floyd without any violence. So here we go.
I think law enforcement, the National Guard are really, Courtney, as you hold that thought, are really trying to get those interstates closed down before something happens. It's really difficult for them to protect everyone that's out there right now, and so they moved the closures up from what would have been 8 o'clock until 5 o'clock, up to 5 o'clock. And the goal, I think, once they saw this hit the interstates, both 94 and now 35W, was to keep people safe and allow them onto those major thoroughfares.
There's the bicycles now starting to block traffic.
Yeah, and Randy.
Go ahead,
Randy,
Courtney.
I don't know if you can see. I don't know if you can see our camera shot. I walked away to get over the bridge so I can get a better vantage point. You can see the bicyclists now are stopping the cars that are coming down. Now we'll see if this Audi is going to get through. It looks like they will, but there are going to definitely be some people who are going to get stuck here.
We're seeing what you see, Courtney.
Perfect. And again, guys, no law enforcement in the area here. I'm not seeing a single Minneapolis police officer, not a single National Guard, not a single state patrol. And it looks like they have a couple cars on their side as well. You can see a car parked in the middle of 35 there. But again, no law enforcement down here.
That is the alarming part of this. For folks watching at home, that would be the most concerning, is that this is being done by citizens, by people, by protesters on bicycles, stopping Sunday night traffic on a major interstate, so far successfully, by the way. And as we pointed out earlier, not everybody's going to love this idea.
Well, the one difference here is that it is happening during the daytime hours and not at night, which also creates such a dangerous situation. We've had that over the last few nights where protesters go out after dark, and then it's hard for these cars to see that there are people on the interstate too. Cars are, slowly moving off of the highway right now and exiting. And we'll see if, because we know those National Guard Humvees have already rolled out from St. Paul, we'll see in the next couple minutes or so if they make their way over here.
Courtney, what are you seeing from your vantage point in terms, because you're right there with people?
Come this way. Yeah, let me tell you, this crowd goes all the way down University. I can't even see an ending point to this crowd. This is a huge crowd coming down University. I'm just trying to get a better view of how many people. I can't even tell you. And most of them are dressed in black. They are chanting, as you can hear, George Floyd, say his name. And really peaceful. They're just marching. They've got signs, and that's all they're doing. They're marching peacefully on to 35 right now. And by the way, the plan, so we've heard, is to get off a couple exits down on Washington Avenue, one exit down, and go back to US Bank Stadium. So from what we understand, they're making a big loop right now.
Okay. All right. Any sign of MnDOT? It doesn't look like it where you are, Courtney, but just curious if you've seen any MnDOT vehicles around the area.
No, Kelsey, somebody here who is not a part of the protest, who's just watching, said that they did see a state patrol officer a few exits up, and that they were blocking traffic. So they clearly knew this was coming, and of course they did. But no law enforcement here. I think that they're just letting them do their thing. I think that they are they're not intervening. They're letting them do their thing. From what we hear, they block traffic a few exits up just for safety, but nope, no law enforcement down here at all.
Well, there are traffic cams all around, so obviously MnDOT and law enforcement would know exactly where they are at all times. So if they were going to assist, they would be doing it right now. And there you can see they're trickling around onto the grass and onto 35W now. Again, for our folks watching at home, that's right at the intersection of University Avenue and 35W. This group began near downtown Minneapolis. At least that's when we picked them up. And then there's another group on the interstate. We're on Interstate 94 westbound from the state capitol heading toward Minneapolis. Got off on Lexington Avenue, headed north on Lexington, and then peeled off at University Avenue.
Yeah, and with both groups, they had a pack of bicyclists that have gone onto the interstate first to divert traffic and get them onto an exit ramp, and then allow the protesters to come down onto the interstate and start moving. So again, as Courtney said, their route may be to get back to US Bank Stadium. We'll continue to watch, and then we also need to monitor. There's a group that was in St. Paul that was on 94 and then got off on Lexington to see where they're headed. Still 3 hours before curfew, and these groups have been peaceful all day long as they've marched and as they've met and as they've said George Floyd's name. And law enforcement is supporting them right now by moving around them and sometimes getting them down the highway.
See a National Guard helicopter in the sky right now. That's normal protocol, at least if we compare it to what we saw last night. You'll see a large show of force tonight to prevent anything that could be planned that is much different than what we're seeing right now. If it got violent, back into fires and looting, that is the concern, that there would be some sporadic events of that on this night. The show of force we saw last night will continue again tonight. We've been assured of that by the mayors of both cities and the governor and law enforcement. So when the sun goes down, it should be a similar situation as we saw last night. This is all daylight, and as Kelsey pointed out, the curfew again at 8 o'clock tonight, so they're almost 3 hours away from that, but the interstate's closed early. There's Courtney Godfrey. Can we take Courtney? She's with some people. Can we listen in?
Got arrested, and we need 3 more. So, yeah.
What's this about today? It seems like you guys are want to send a message to the world today that you guys are peaceful. Kind of talk to me about that.
We're just trying to get the message out, just let people know.
What's the point of shutting down the freeway here?
I don't know. Just letting people know we want justice, and pretty much what it is.
What brought you out here today?
I know what this is for. This is a big deal, and everyone's not going to stop until they get what they want.
Yeah, where you live? Where are you from?
I'm originally from Chicago, but I moved to Minnesota a few years ago. So I've been here for a while. And right now I'm in Minneapolis, so.
Great.
Yes,
Thank you.
Yeah, and we've had peaceful marches and protests, most days. At night, though, the violence that has been out of control and the looting has left about 200 businesses damaged or destroyed. The fires that could not be put out because fire departments could not get in to fight those flames because they were being fired upon by the groups out there. And again, the governor has said and the mayor has said that they have information that outside groups want to come in and mix it up with the protesters that are here peacefully, but also, create problems.
On the interstate, once they entered the interstate, off-ramps were closed down, and let me just bring you up to speed on what you're seeing on your screen right now. We have two separate groups, two separate protesting groups, rallying groups, if you will. One in the left-hand side of your screen started in downtown Minneapolis, made a loop down and around University to 35W and University there. You see them now looping back toward the city, we're told toward US Bank Stadium. The group on your right side of your screen started at the state capitol, came down onto 94 westbound, marched for a couple miles, came up Lexington Avenue to University in Lexington, where they are right now at Chatfield and University. And those are the two separate groups that have chosen to rally peacefully today. And in the midst of all of this is the highways, the major highways closing in downtown Minneapolis and the surrounding areas. All the major thoroughfares were closed earlier than expected. They were expected to close at 8 o'clock tonight. Instead, they moved it up 3 hours based on the movement of the group coming from the state capitol and this other group. And so I think law enforcement, MnDOT, and everyone else involved is doing their best to try and keep these groups safe without intervening. Mm-hmm. Not an element of intervention to stop them from going anywhere.
And here are the highway closures, just so you know, basically all the main roads in and out of St. Paul here. Traffic will be able to leave the cities, but after 5 o'clock, and we have yet to see the MnDOT trucks, but they wanted to try to close everything down at 5 o'clock. 35W, 94, eastbound 394 closed between Highway 100 and 94. Highway 55 closed in both directions between Highway 62 and 94, and 35E in both directions between Highway 36 and Highway 62. I also want to mention, over by Paul in St. Paul, when we saw that group moving onto I-94 and then off on Lexington, we saw all these National Guard Humvees then moving after that crowd, but we don't know where they went, and they didn't follow the crowd.
And last night, those same National Guard, or some National Guard members, were used to help close off the highways too. So it could be that when that 5 o'clock call for closing off came in, they moved very quickly to try and make that happen. You can see that both cities, basically the arteries in and out of both cities, the main arteries in and out of both cities are now shut down. That is a process, however. It takes a while to get people out, and that's where we stand right now. It should be noted, people talk and the looting, but no one is arguing that this is what Minnesota is about, and the cleanup and the brooms and the buckets and you know, everything has been done to try and help those areas most affected. It continues even today. I mean, it's amazing to see.
Yeah, you know, I cannot stop thinking about those guys who were armed and protecting the market on Lake Street last night. Tom Lydon was out there, and those guys were like, you got to understand, this is the last market that is available for people in this neighborhood, and we are going to be out here tonight to protect it.
This is the cleanup of Target that we talked about earlier, the mass of people that showed up to assist in just, you know, as quickly as they can try and get some semblance of normalcy back to that Lake Street area. And people from all over Minnesota, all over the Twin Cities, are coming every day to help in this process, to make the narrative that was hijacked go away, essentially. Get back to the original narrative, and that is change in the neighborhoods that have for so long needed change and wanted change, and get back to what what the memory of George Floyd for many folks is meant to be.
Yeah, Kelly O'Connell, Fox 9 morning anchor, was out there at the Target store. You know, she lives in St. Paul. She's devastated by what's happened to her community, and she talked to this organizer who is at the Minneapolis Lake Street Target today about why they're out there and just the emotion that's pouring through the community right now. And I think we can play that.
Okay, what's your name?
Hey, my name is Pierre Paul. I'm 21 years old. I drove in from Illinois last night. It started with just me and a friend, Emma, starting in the Target. We started cleaning it out. Then we had 1,000 people outside helping us clean it out. And then we decided when we were done getting the food goods out to donate, we would come back today We called the trash company. They contacted me. We got them in here. And now we're organizing everything. All of these amazing volunteers out here really who are making this run. These people are the heart and soul of it. And what's really important is that you see people out here with hijabs. You see people out here who are wearing Black Lives Matter shirts, people who are wearing Cop Lives Matter shirts. But none of that matters because we're all coming together for one common good. And that's to bring justice to what's happening to the stores. And hopefully we can bring that justice to African Americans who feel as though it's been taken away from them because it has been.
When you started this, did you think you'd get this crowd?
Absolutely not. When it started with just 2 of us inside the Target, there was no way that I could have known that these many people would come out to support. But this is exactly what we love to see. This is the support that we are looking for in every single issue. It shouldn't have to get to this point for everybody to come together, but it's beautiful to see people of all different races, ethnicities, sexes, genders. Love to see all of that coming out to support. So thank you so much. There's always help. There's always need for help somewhere.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be safe. Thank you for all you're doing for our community.
Thank you so much.
That's powerful. How quickly he made all of that happen. And he came in from out of state.
And it's a young generation. Take a look now at 35W in Washington Avenue. You get a scope now for the number of people we're talking about and where they are. 35W, Washington Avenue. That is a very, very large group. And that is the group that Hannah Flood and Courtney Godfrey are. One is in the rear of the group and one is up front of the group, and they're trying to follow along and talk to folks.
And these cars are sort of stuck there right now. There's nowhere for them to go.
Yeah, they're stuck.
And again, this is probably a couple thousand people. This is a very big group. Hannah said it's probably the biggest group that she has seen. And it looks like they're stopping again, at least on one side of the highway there.
Every once in a while, these groups will stop and take a knee. Somebody will talk, they'll take a knee, they'll throw a fist in the air, and generally speaking, it's remember George Floyd or say George Floyd's name is generally what happens, or at least what we've seen happen in the past few days. This group clearly is stopped, taking a knee. We'll see where it goes from here.
All right, and this is Hannah Flood on Twitter today. Thousands of protesters getting onto 35W at University Avenue headed south. They're calling for justice again for George Floyd. They may be making a loop back to US Bank Stadium, which is where they started today. We're not sure what their intention is or where they're headed. And there's still several hours before the curfew, so this has been peaceful. And they're also being supported by law enforcement. And MnDOT is trying to close down the highways, I think, is obviously as a result earlier than expected, because there's some safety issues with traffic and all of these people being on the highways. But so far, there's a couple of hours before that curfew goes into effect, and we will see where these groups decide to go and what they have planned for the rest of the evening.
You can see how empty the interstates are now. You're still going to have some eastbound traffic moving through some of this. This again, let's move you back to St. Paul. This is about University Avenue and Lexington Avenue. This is east on University. You're seeing it live there from the helicopter. I'm trying to figure out, that group has stayed stationary for a while. I don't know if it's moving now or not. I can't really tell. A smaller group, yet one that began at the state capitol, came on to 94 westbound, made their way onto Lexington, and now onto University Avenue, heading, we're told, eastbound. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Eastbound. Not sure what their destination will be either, and we'll continue to watch. St. Paul police have been tweeting along as this group has been moving, telling people where they're going, but also St. Paul police have made it very clear on social media that they are there to ensure this group's safety right now. The leaders of the communities have said they want people to be able to gather, and this is east on University at Milton Street, but they want people to be able to gather and come together peacefully, and they will support them.
tribes, Native American leaders that have been leading some of these protests in that crowd as well. And then you've got a lot of people up here on the bridge. I'm not sure how much of it you'll be able to see, but a lot of people who are just kind of watching all of this happen, watching history happen as the highway here is shut down. 5:40 is the time right now, and I know they're shutting down highways again here for another day of just uncertainty in Minneapolis. But right now, things are not moving in either direction on 35W at this time.
You know, Hannah, you've had a chance to be out and to talk to so many people, and there are such diverse groups that are moving right now and have been moving for the last couple of days in these protest marches. You were out at 38th in Chicago yesterday, where George Floyd died on Monday. Tell us a little bit about that experience too, and just what you've seen over the last few days. Do you get a sense that people are coming in from all across the state and other places to be part of at least the peaceful side of these marches?
Well, I know at 38th in Chicago yesterday when I was there, it was really a lot of people from that neighborhood who said, this is our neighborhood. These are the stores that we shop at. These are our neighbors and our community members, and really wanting to show out for them. I didn't have a chance to ask many people here, but I know that we've seen some of these national leaders start to come in and lead some of these demonstrations and kind of lead those calls for peace. And what I saw out at 38th in Chicago yesterday, there was a choir singing, there was a cookout. We've seen a lot of these donation sites pop up where people are calling for donations, because a lot of people on the south side right now with those fires, they don't have a local grocery store. A lot of those businesses are closed, they're burned to the ground. So that's a lot of the community support that we're seeing come out here during the day, and more calls for unity. I just heard, here's a Minneapolis police officer coming by right now. This is the first member of law enforcement that I've seen at this protest today. It looks like that police car is headed onto 35W heading south, and that would put the officers ahead of the protesters who are still stopped on 35W, and it looks like they're stopped right at the 35W bridge. I want to show you. It looks like they're still sitting there. We did see them on the Hennepin Avenue Bridge take a knee, put a fist in the air, a moment of silence for George Floyd. So I can't tell from here if that's exactly what they're doing, but they have been stopped on the 35W bridge here for some time.
Anna, any concept from those that you've talked to, if you can get a chance, maybe you can pull somebody aside and see if they know exactly what the destination is. If the point is, and we can assume that the point is once you get on an interstate, that's where you get the most attention, and that is actually happening right now. But we're kind of curious as to where this group intends to end up, and I'm sure law enforcement's goal is to figure out where to get them safely as well.
I know that Courtney was talking to some people out here who said that they were planning on going back to US Bank Stadium. It looks like people are making their way up this, what would be an exit ramp off of 35W. So I believe that is the plan, to head back up to US Bank Stadium. And all of the people that I was talking to before they took off on the march, their entire goal is to be a peaceful protest. So I don't believe it's to stop traffic for the entire day. I don't believe it's to march down to the 3rd precinct where we've seen some of that destruction. It's just to put out that big display, to get as many people as they can in unity coming together, showing peace, but also showing solidarity for George Floyd and his family.
What's the makeup of that crowd, Hannah?
You know, it's a really diverse crowd. I mentioned earlier that some Native American leaders were in the crowd, white people, black people. I would say it's a lot of younger people that are in this crowd. We saw a lot of people that maybe look like they were high school age. I did see Chet Holmgren out here, if you know who he is. He plays basketball at Minnehaha Academy. I believe he'll be a senior this year. So a lot of kind of younger people that age, and a lot of people out on bicycles today. And I know earlier you were talking to Courtney and Paul about maybe some of the strategy of using bicycles to kind of free out areas for protesters to go. But we've seen a lot of people on bikes out here today as well. But kind of beautiful, and the organizers were talking about this before they started the march, is it's so important to have diversity in these crowds, to show unity, to show that, you know, white people here in Minnesota and black people here in Minnesota are really coming together for one unified message, and that message is peace, but above all, they say, is justice.
All right, Hannah Flood, just to give our viewers an update on where we are right now. You're looking at the 35W bridge, or, well, it's 35W now. They're on 35W at Washington Avenue. They've been positioned here, several thousand people. Came from downtown Minneapolis, made a loop, starting at US Bank Stadium, made a loop through downtown Minneapolis, crossed the Hennepin Avenue Bridge, made their way onto 35 I-35W, as you're seeing right now, and they position themselves there. Law enforcement has let them do that. They've really closed off some areas so that they could get on there peacefully and peacefully protest, peacefully march, and that's exactly what's happening. It's made easier by the fact that all the interstates in and out of both cities are now shut down. That was planned for 8 p.m. They moved it up to 5 p.m. to assist in this process. So the threat of traffic has been reduced, although there were stoppages from members of this very large group stopping traffic with crossing bicycles across the interstate. Hannah Flood is back on the scene with someone who attended today.
Everyone's
Hannah?
cooperating with us. Today's perfect, nice and smooth, no violence, no anything going wrong. Everything just peaceful today. I was out the day after he died, I was out at the protest and it was peaceful. And today's another peaceful day. It's just the stuff that happens at nighttime that's just the scary part.
Spencer, what is it like seeing the highway shut down?
It's powerful. Like, you have to hear us. You can't run from it. You have to hear us. You have to. Like, it's powerful. Like, there's all these people are standing for equality, everything, just injustice, things aren't right. And it just shows that people are willing to walk on these streets, like walk, everyone's out, like no one's hiding. Like, you have to see what's going on, what's bad and what's going wrong.
The organizers of this event today, when they were getting ready to get people marching, they were talking about the message that they wanted to send, the visuals of unity and of peace. How important is that? Oh, we just had
gosh.
Oh my God.
What's happening, Hannah?
What is it, Hannah?
I'm sorry.
we're seeing the groups.
A truck that just barreled down the highway.
Oh no.
Barreled down the highway through a group
No.
of people.
No.
We heard it
No,
honking, and then we heard it just take
That's what
off
I'm
going
talking about.
northbound on
It's peaceful until
35W.
that happens.
Honking his horn, and it looked like people were able to move out of the way.
Oh no.
But not enough. This is not good, guys.
Okay.
Hannah, just stay with
Yeah,
this.
this is
Just
not
stay
good.
with this. See if we can get back up onto that.
We've got some
above
medics
view.
saying that they're coming down there.
Okay.
We've got some people saying they're medics running down there. We've seen people rush down that way right now. We can't really tell what's happening. Hoping everyone there is safe. That truck came down honking, and it came fast.
And it was fast, yeah.
Hannah, which direction did that truck come from? Can you tell? Was it coming from
It
the
came
south?
north. It was coming from the south, heading north. Yep. So coming from kind of the downtown area, heading north up the 35W.
So directly
bridge.
into the crowd.
It's hard. Yes, it went directly into the crowd. It was honking, so it's hard to tell if people were able to move out of the way. The crowd then that was in one lane jumped over that partition then and just started, it looked like giving aid to people, but that truck came through so fast.
We saw
It was honking its horn, like I said, but it came through that crowd.
Okay, we're
Can
gonna try
we
to
get the
some
chopper
more.
back up above this scene? And we need to see it from the air. There is the
Okay, the truck is still moving, but people are also
There are
jumping
people
on
on
the
the
truck.
hood of the truck, all over the truck.
And there's no law enforcement right now in this area.
All right, well, we need to stay with this shot. I would love to find out from the rear of that truck, back where it came from, if there are any issues with the paramedics or anybody else on the interstate. You can see that the anger from that crowd is starting to build, and there are people on the roof of that semi. They're on the tanker of the semi. Doors are open. I can assume the driver of that truck has his shirt off.
We have police throwing out
And
tear
they're
gas.
amazing now, macing people and tear gassing people away from that individual there with the bare skin.
Yeah, sure.
Being placed
Randy and
into
Kelsey,
that
if you can hear
second
me, we're
squad.
seeing a lot of people now. We're seeing a lot of people now running up that ramp, and like you said, there was some mace being sprayed. People are just running in mass to get off of this highway to get back up right now. It's chaotic, and you can tell people are scared. I can hear people screaming.
Well, this truck came in.
People screaming.
This truck came onto the highway so quickly, and blaring its horn. We are unclear if anybody was hit by this truck, and we don't know where the driver is right now. We just saw a group of people kind of shoving and moving, and then dispersing once the police vehicles arrived. And there are 4 police vehicles there right now, and we can hear more coming.
Hannah, let's go back to you. You have somebody with
Here come some
you.
more police cars right now. You can see them coming down. These police cars are coming down Washington. They're about to hop on this Washington Avenue exit to hop onto 35 here to hopefully meet up with those people here who we believe to be injured. And now we've just got a caravan of police. And I'm here with a young man, Shane Harris, Reverend Shane Harris. You were standing on this bridge when this happened. Tell me what happened.
Well, we were here. We were a part of helping to facilitate, get folks organized. And we then realized I was walking up with a group and a contingent of organizers of this rally to meet the governor and mayor, when we then turned around and saw this humongous oil truck speeding straight through. The gas truck sped straight through, and immediately he would not stop. He kept going. He was at least going 70 miles an hour, went straight through the crowd. Never seen this before. It's egregious to see. I don't know what he was thinking. He saw those people. He saw those people there. And
I'm sorry to interrupt you here. Right now we're seeing this police vehicle here. You see an officer hanging out the back of that vehicle as well. They're in riot gear. They're getting out of that vehicle in riot gear. Now we're finally, seeing this road being blocked off from this direction. And Shane, I want to come back to you and just try to describe what the moments were like after that truck came through.
we were running down the ramp, literally trying to tell people to move. We were coming from here because we were set to meet the governor and the mayor. And we then realized, we turned around and saw this gas truck speeding straight through. And we were trying to turn around, but by the time we turned around, this guy was going 70 miles an hour. It seemed like it was almost impossible to tell people to move, and he just wouldn't stop.
You can see now, you guys at home, all of these police cars, one after another,
So
getting on.
we've queued up the video now. We've queued up the video, Hannah, just hang on a second, of what happened earlier. This is right after the truck came through. It did stop there, as you can see, but prior to that, for a few seconds prior to that, it came in hot, came into that group of people. They parted like the sea, but we don't know if he hit anybody. All we know is at this point, many people jumped on that cab, jumped onto the semi, onto the tanker, to the back, and presumably removed the driver of that vehicle, because shortly after this, we could see a crowd of people on the top of your screen surrounding someone. And then a minute or so later, police moved in and started spraying mace, getting people away, and an individual was taken out of that crowd standing and placed into a cruiser.
Yeah, and they started spraying mace to get people out of the way. We don't know if anybody was hit by this tanker, and I want to make that clear. We're still trying to find out, because he came in so fast onto the highway, intentionally going through this crowd at a high rate of speed. We don't know if anybody was hit, and it would have been hard for everybody to move out of the way quickly. So we're trying to get as much information as we can. We know that MPD is there on scene and trying to get control of the situation.
It does beg the question, with the interstates closed, with everyone, MnDOT including, knowing that this crowd was there, where did that semi come from?
Yeah.
You know, where did that vehicle have the ability to get back onto 35W and directly head toward that very, very large crowd? There were thousands of people on that side of 35W heading back south, and we saw that crowd start to part, and all of a sudden this semi was barreling into them. We do not know, folks.
Thank you for stopping and telling us, okay? You need to get somewhere safe, okay? Okay, thank you. As you can see, you guys, really emotional for people. They're starting to come up right now, people who were on that bridge, and telling us what they're seeing. And we're going to move a little.
Okay, keep asking.
We're with someone.
Keep asking some of the witnesses what they saw.
I heard it, and I saw everybody scatter. Literally, like, everybody's across the highway, and you see and hear the semi coming, and everybody just splits, and the semi starts swerving, trying to hit everybody in sight, like just swerving down the highway.
How fast? I mean, were people able to move?
They were moving pretty fast. He was coming pretty quick. I'm not sure how fast, but he came pretty quick down the highway.
Thank you for talking to us. Get somewhere safe, okay? Yeah, so you can see here people who were on the bridge at the time are starting to come up. They're clearly shaken. They're clearly upset. People tell us that people were hit by this truck. I can tell you, we saw it coming down the highway. This truck was going fast. It was blasting at its horn, and the people who were on the ground at the time tell us it was swerving and zigzagging. I mean, and with 2,000 people or so packed onto a bridge, it was obviously hard for people to move quickly enough to get out of the way. From our vantage point, we still can't really tell if there were people down there who are hurt. A lot of people have cleared that bridge now, especially this northbound lane that the truck was going down. But again, people coming up here tell us they do think there's people that are hurt down there. We've got a Minneapolis police SWAT car down here. There's just now police everywhere in this area. I saw a police car. Sure.
Let me ask you a quick question. We can't see any ambulances, but have you seen any where you're standing come in yet?
I have not seen any ambulances yet from where I am standing. I have not seen any ambulances. I've only seen police vehicles so far. And right now we're seeing actually a caravan of police head down Washington going the opposite way. So not sure what they're doing. They're all in riot gear, gas mask, face shields, heading the opposite way down Washington Avenue right now. So we're not sure. Maybe they're trying to get to a better vantage point. But that's what we're seeing out here, Kelsey. Have not seen an ambulance yet.
Hannah, when you first heard that horn, you said you heard beeping, how much time before people had to react?
Not much, Randy, not much. If you can get an idea, we're standing on this bridge. I saw it just as it was emerging from under this bridge, and just where a little bit past where you see those police cars right now and where you see that crowd, they were a little bit further north on 35W, but that's as much time as they had to react from this bridge to just past where they're standing right now. All right. So not much time to react, and like I said, with a crowd that big, there's not a crowd that big on a bridge. There's not very many places to go, so that's our fears that just people
Hannah,
physically couldn't get out of the way.
Hannah, I'm just going to cut you off. I'm sorry, real quick. We've got Courtney, who's down with some of these folks as well. Some of the people who were on the interstate at the time who got the mace. So Courtney, what are you hearing from people who saw this truck come in?
Yeah. Actually, Kelsey, they didn't see the truck. We're still down by University, and these individuals were marching peacefully and didn't know what was happening ahead. I could hear it in my ear because I could hear Hannah, and they had no idea what was going on. And all of a sudden, people started running back this way. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Minneapolis police just charged down this on-ramp and started spraying pepper spray out of their windows. This individual got pepper sprayed. Just tell me what happened.
When I got pepper sprayed, but when they were coming around the cars, there was still a bunch of cars parked here. They deliberately drove into civilian cars, dented multiple cars, and lifted one car off the ground and turned it completely. And after that, when they were coming around that, they just pepper sprayed everybody.
They're coming up the ramp right now with tear gas. They're coming up the ramp right now with tear gas.
All right, Courtney, back off from that area. Back off from that area.
We're going to get to a safe location.
Okay, there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of chaos right now here by 35W. Let's
Clearly,
just recap real quick what happened. We had a tanker truck that got onto the highway somehow, came barreling through the crowd. It is unclear right now if anybody is hurt, but people have said they think people got hit. And then a large group of people gathered around the cab of that truck, and we don't know what happened to the driver. We have Minneapolis police headed onto the interstate right now. And it is chaotic as people try to move. This is a crowd of more than 2,000 people.
What law enforcement are trying to do is seal off that area. I mean, it's a crime scene, obviously, and they're going to seal off that area, and they're going to have to disperse the crowd. That's the only way they can make this happen. And compound that by the fact that there's nothing that could have happened that could raise the emotions of this crowd more than what just happened, what we witnessed what all of you at home just witnessed. So this is a very, very volatile situation right now with what we witnessed just a few minutes ago, and we're just hoping, because I just don't see, I couldn't see it. I saw the group start to separate, and I saw that semi come through, but we just couldn't see from Skyfox 9 whether he hit anybody or not. We're hearing from people on the scene that some people were struck by that semi truck, a tanker. Hannah Flood is at the scene down there with people who were part of that. She joins us again now live. Hannah?
Yeah, I was just talking to a guy who showed me a video on his cell phone of someone climbing up onto the hood of that truck as it was coming through, and he said he saw a couple people get injured. He just could not tell how seriously. So right when we heard Courtney say that they were spraying pepper spray on the ramp, we saw just a huge plume of chaos, people running and screaming as a bunch of Minneapolis police officers started coming down what would be an exit ramp onto 35W going the opposite way. And we're seeing more police officers get onto that ramp right now. Of course, with so many people who were on the bridge, this is chaotic. A lot of people didn't have anywhere to go and were obviously scared after that truck came through with thousands of people on the bridge. So it looks like right now police are working to just block off this area, secure this whole area, hopefully prevent obviously any more vehicles from getting down this way. But it looks like they're just trying to clear everyone off of the bridge and hopefully bring medical aid to anyone down there who might need it right now.
If we can, let's go back up in the air. I think people